Welcome back to the Resilient Man podcast. Today's guest is Elliot, a man who's turned deep personal pain into powerful purpose. From childhood trauma and addiction to therapy healing and building a business that lights him up. Elliot's story is raw, real, and full of lessons. Let's get into it. Elliot, welcome to the Resilient Man podcast.
Thank you, James. Pleasure to be here, buddy. It's good to be on the show.
No, good to have you. So the Resilient Man podcast is all about those moments of adversity, those moments of struggle. So I'd like you just to, at a high level, give me 2 or 3 moments that jump out for you, and then what we'll do is we'll dive in a little bit deeper and explore those. So what were those moments for you?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one that springs to mind is when I was 7. My dad actually had a brain injury, and I didn't know it at the time. I just opened the door. He was laid down on the sofa, not looking too well, and that was a catalyst for me where he basically almost died and went into a coma and all of this, lost all his long-term and short-term memory, and basically had to rebuild his life from there. And that was a key moment for me because in that moment I kind of contextualized things in a negative way, and it kind of led to me a lot of the time perceiving that I wasn't good enough and things like that. And through therapy and stuff, I've realised, where that was attributed to that one singular event. Going through school and into university, I probably carried that with me for a lot of the time. It kind of came to a head, I suppose. The second key moment would have been like just getting into university was such a big change for me. Just a relationship just broken down with my first love, how it is. And then that sort of relationship broke down. Just got into university, and I never really did amazingly at school. I was doing like BTEC, so that's like a step below. It's an A level, but it's made a lot easier for people. So I did that, and I jumped straight into a medical degree as a physiotherapist, and that was a big reality shock for me. And then this led to a spiral of like drugs and sex and girls and all of this, and eventually sort of a lot of self-doubt, anxiety. And when I was like 21, I had like a big like weed addiction from like, I don't know, probably 19 to like 21, where I was literally smoking weed like 3-4 times a day, and I'd literally be with my family and I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to get back and smoke weed like that. So those are the 2 big moments, and then that sort of led to a journey of self-development and self-progression. And then sort of the third big moment was probably more recently, like in the last few years, actually taking the leap from 9-to-5 world into business and using those fears, anxieties and worries to actually put it to something better and have the belief and the self-belief to actually go and make it of something of myself in a way that I wanted to. So yeah, I think those are probably the 3 key things for me.
Awesome. Okay. So just looking at this chronologically, going back to when you're 7 years old, can you tell me what you remember? Do you have any memories like leading up to that moment?
Leading up to it is very much one scene in my mind, and I think it's a response traumatically that I've blocked out a lot of that time of my life. And leading up to it, I honestly don't remember much. Like, it's more of like I wouldn't describe it as vivid at all. It's almost like a haze. And literally, I just walk in, like I described, open the lounge door. My dad's like asleep. I would say passed out. It's a bit of a strong word. Definitely asleep on the sofa. And he was a man of like, entrepreneur, always busy. I'd always been the kid that would ring him at 8 o'clock saying, like, are you coming home or not? So for me, that was very different for him to be viewing like that. So yeah, that's all I remember really from that exact moment. And then the second memory would have been, I think it was around Christmas, like going to the rehabilitation centre, where he was having like physiotherapy and stuff, and like seeing him there in a hospital bed was the second probably memory around that time.
So what was the, you might not be able to remember this in great detail, but what kind of impact did that have on you?
It had a huge impact. I didn't know at the time, but like I said, it really kind of we had both a positive and negative impact. Obviously, you kind of learn to have a positive impact around these things as time moves forwards. But for a lot of those formative years through school and teenager years and then early adulthood, it made me feel like I wasn't going to be enough, or put me in a very much of a scarcity mindset, you know, in that like I never had enough, I never was going to be enough. That I wouldn't say like I was definitely never victimized by it. I always said like, oh, what happens makes you stronger, or I'm glad that happened. And but deep down, it kind of made me feel very hurt and upset. And then the word upset is funny because through therapy, I learned that one word contained around 20 different emotions. So I had this sort of like one word that I just kind of had this heavy feeling, and no matter what I did and achieved or things like that, it just kind of was with me all the time. And like I had sort of, yeah, I don't know, I never got diagnosed with depression or anxiety. I never went straight to a GP about it, but I remember like a time in my probably early 20s, I was on a bus to placement at uni, and like it was almost like when I come out of this, like going from like everything feeling very dim, like literally visual field, like colours not popping, like everything looking really dim and just not very transparent. And then like something switched, and like I listened to a podcast at the time, and I remember just like colours just popping everywhere. It's like taking some sort of drug, and like colours and vivid things. So yeah, it had a big impact on me overall, and as I say, it carried through more into how I was showing up as a person and my behaviours, and what I thought about myself as well, I think.
So you mentioned there that you didn't talk to anybody at the time, but then you've since had therapy. When did that come in?
Therapy came at 2 points in my life. So it came when I was around 19. That was the first time I went to therapy. My brother actually introduced me to his therapist when I was at university. It was a good experience, but at that time it was more around relationship with the girlfriend that I just split up from, and it was less about what the situation was described. I never really thought about that had affected me. It wasn't until like 3 years ago, so I'm 27, yeah, probably like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just post COVID, that I had therapy on this basically. Because as I said, I was just feeling heavy. I was like just constantly just not really feeling like my full self, and I couldn't really sort it out. I consumed all the self-help books. I'd listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts and tried everything, but I just couldn't sort it out. I just couldn't like, I wasn't in a bad place. Like I didn't want to kill myself, or I didn't want to like, do anything. I was functioning really well, but something just felt off, and the relationships around me felt really off with my family, especially with my dad. Like I grew up with like having to relearn this new man that I didn't really know who he was for like 15 years. And that was what drove me to that. It came in like my mid-20s really, was when that came in.
And before you went to therapy, did you speak to anyone about how you was feeling, or did you just go straight and contact therapy?
I probably spoke to my girlfriend about things for certain, but I couldn't really articulate how I was feeling until I went to therapy. It was just a sense, like, I never really had the insight that I have now. And for all of my life, from until that point, and well, until a year later from that point, I never really knew how to articulate my emotions. And things like anger was something that I never felt, ever. I learned to suppress that, and I learned to not show that, because it would have put me in danger, would put my child in danger at that point in my life. So it was hard for me to even contextualize or speak about that specific thing and the impact on that had on me before going through that process. I always just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, my dad had a brain injury, but yeah, it's cool now. Everything's fine. It was never really in depth because I probably didn't have the emotional intelligence at that point to go through that.
So was there a key moment for you to say, do you know what? I've had enough of feeling like this. I'm going to speak to somebody.
I think so, yeah. I think like there's probably a couple of moments. I think I changed jobs, and through changing jobs, let me rewind a little bit. I was in a job and in a certain place, same industry as a physio, but just wasn't really kind of getting on very well there, and wasn't very happy there. And I thought it was just the job, right? And I changed jobs to the company that I've been working for for a couple of years now, and everything still felt a bit off. You know what I mean? I kind of got this new job as exciting and stuff, but I just had this sense of feeling off. So that was definitely a key moment. And then also just being sat, like, being with my mum and dad sat at home at the dinner table, feeling like I wanted to run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is definitely the key point for me, where I was like, I don't want to feel this way around two people who love me and I love them back. And it wasn't that it was their fault. It was just that that's what I learned to feel as a child, because it felt unsafe to me and felt scary. So I think those two things probably stand out to me the most.
And so you went through that therapy, and what's the impact now in terms of like that relationship with your dad, and again sat at that table? How have the feelings changed?
It's massive, honestly, life changing, and wouldn't even come close to that. Like, I'm so close with my dad now, and I can have a really good conversation with him, and I feel comfortable in his company. For example, I used to kind of get in the car with him and really feel like on edge, and I feel like I couldn't even speak or talk, or didn't want to put a foot wrong. Whereas now, like, I'd happily go for a beer or whatever and have that. But the wider relationships with my other family members and friends and things like that, it's been massive, and I genuinely wouldn't be able to have the courage to build a business if I hadn't gone through that and resolved those issues, because I would never have had the belief necessary to push me through all the hard times, and have the resilience to be able to keep on going. So honestly, it was single-handedly the best, most hardest year and a half, but most transformative as well.
So if there's someone listening who's considering therapy, what would you say to them?
I'd say just try multiple therapists as well, because it's so easy to get put off with one single experience. And I think as humans that we're too quick to dip out of stuff that feels scary or doesn't feel right. And to give you a story, like, it took me two therapists before I got to my one that I felt like I could share everything with, and I would never have got to that place if I hadn't just kept going. Like, I remember going to one like a month and a half, 2 months before I landed with the therapist I ended up staying with for like 18 months. And it was as simple as this. Like, the vibe in the room just felt different. I didn't feel comfortable. It was a small room, it was dark, it was like a lamp in the corner, she had a notepad. It all just felt very like consuming, and I didn't like that. So even down to that, I'd just say you got nothing to lose. Like, if you're struggling to if you think like you're struggling, something feels off, just stay curious and have a go. Like, that's the one thing I'd say. And it will be hard at times, but if you put in the work outside of therapy as well, it's can be transformative.
Awesome, yeah, and I think that's a really valuable point as well. For myself, when I went to therapy, I walked in and I was instant. I didn't want to go in the first regard anyway. But when I got there and there was a lady there with the clipboard, again, you described the same room that I was in, with the light in the corner and the plant and everything else, and you just think, oh, this is just exactly what you see in the movies type thing, and this is going to be rubbish. And it's kind of that negative attitude towards it, and it's about just trying to be more open. And if that therapist doesn't work, like you said, there's other therapists out there that might be able to.
Yeah, 100%. And like, to give you contrast to that story, the second therapist was like almost like a church hall type environment that was like a very open space, big tall ceilings, lots of light coming in. There was just me and her in a big like room that could have seated like 30 people. So for me, that enabled me to talk a bit more freely and openly. So it even comes down to that, and like, obviously, like, online therapy now is a big thing with like BetterHelp and things like that. And even with that, like, it can be really helpful, of course it can. But there was no way I would have sat in my mum and dad's room and had that like conversation about them and the childhood in that room. So I think environment is definitely key when it comes to like selecting a therapist that you want to work with. Ultimately, you have to feel safe, and that comes over time. You're always going to feel scary. There was multiple times where I'd arrive at therapy, I'd sit in my car and be like, Jesus, I don't know if I want to go through this again. But you'd always come out and you feel so much better for it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But I always hate the way that movies and things like that portray therapy, because I think it just it makes the stigma bigger and makes it harder for people to access, because you do get that like clinical looking lab coat, clipboards, straightforward questions, very to the point, not very like conversational, and that just wasn't my experience at all. So I do get frustrated when I see that, I must say.
Now you've been through therapy, are you more open to talking to people about just your feelings and your own mental well-being?
But yeah, 100%. Like I said, it was something I learned through therapy, was how to express emotion. And that only happened by uncovering the emotions that I felt in the first place. Because I didn't know they were covered. I didn't know what was underneath the cover. I couldn't express them. I didn't know the true personality of the emotions. So like I remember like at the time going through that like it was very rocky. I was just up and down all the time, but it was just like these new emotions I hadn't felt before in their entirety were coming to the surface, and I'd experience them fully. It was like a rebirth almost, like I'd experience them fully and then they'd go away, and it's happened for like all the time. But that enabled me to understand how I feel, and obviously sometimes they can teach you techniques, and even to this day, like if there's challenges, I will journal using some of the techniques that I've learned and ask questions for me to contextualize how I'm feeling. Whereas before, I'd never been able to name how I was feeling. In detail, I would say like, oh, I feel pissed off, or I feel like upset was always the word I went to. But now I understand like, okay, now I feel sad, I feel guilty, I feel happy, I feel confused, and all of those can come at the same time about the same situation, which is the confusing thing. But when you've got awareness, it's so much easier to speak about it with friends, family, and I'm open with everyone about it. To be honest, even people who are strangers to me that had the conversation, I'll speak to them about it because I'm comfortable with it. Whereas before, I just didn't have that in my repertoire.
Yeah, no, I fully get that. So, the therapy was this at university or was this after university?
This is after university, so this was I was in full-time work, so it was literally like 2.5, 3 years ago from now, so maybe like 2022 approximately.
Okay, so if we go back slightly, because I know you mentioned about going to university, doing the BTECs, then the relationship breakdown, then the weed addiction. So could you describe what a day in the life of Elliot at that point looked like?
During university, I mean, look, it was a positive experience in my life. I haven't got a lot of negatives to say about that time in my life because it was very, very enjoyable. However, it was driven on a place of trying to fit in, trying to be liked, trying to be loved, accepted with people of different age groups, cultural backgrounds, even just north south, like, the UK, like there's a big difference in how people behave and beliefs and things like that. So I mean, I don't know, day in life was different in some aspects, depending on the year of university. In some years it literally was just some days it would literally just head down, study all day. But I mean, from a drug side of things, it definitely wasn't healthy. Like I'd probably take like, I don't know, like 1 to 2 grams of coke a week, and probably like, maybe 1 gram to 2 grams of ket a week, sometimes pills and things like that. So this was weekly, like it was just normal in that culture, plus weed like pretty much daily. And it was normal. Like it might not, it sounds absurd now, like it just sounds crazy, but at that time it was normal. Wake up, like go to university, depends on the day it was, like go attend lectures, sometimes even go and smoke weed at like lunch, and then go lectures, come home. I had a part-time job, so sometimes I'd attend that, but if I didn't, you'd like chill with friends and probably just smoke. And then even if we was going out on the night, it would just be pre-drinks, drugs, to parties till like 10 a.m, 11 a.m, wake up like 6 p.m, and then deal with the next day. Obviously, at that time, it was a very interesting point in my life, and I don't even regret it. It was just a good time in my life, but like it was definitely driven on negative emotions rather than positive in some aspects.
That was going to be my follow-on question, which is what's drive that? And I know you said earlier about being accepted.
100%. I felt like inferior to some of the people, but don't know, it's weird because I never really like, I wouldn't say that drugs or anything was a way to fit in. It was just it was just the culture and the friends I was with, and it was normal in the university that I was at and the place I was at, and literally everyone was doing it. Like, so it wasn't even, that might sound like you didn't fit in, but genuinely, like, I never really did it for that. You know what I mean? But there were certainly times when I was trying to break free from the weed side of things. That was difficult because like there was an identity shift happening, right? Like I realised that I had to let go of this, and I was maturing. I was like 20, 21, so I started to see the light after university and what life could be like, and I've realised I needed to let go of that in order to have that. Like, it's even weirder throughout all that time. Like, I'd write down like business goals and income goals and all of this. I had my head screwed on in a lot of sense. You know, I graduated with 2-1, you know, a good level of degree. I functioned fine. It was a very weird time. If you think about it objectively, you'd think I'd just be a mess. Performance-wise, I was still performing very high. But yeah, it was an interesting time.
So you decide by yourself, I'm going to give up weed. Is it like cold turkey? That's it. I'm stopping. How did that play out?
Yeah, I think it was. It probably was a few of us because we had loads of exams on, right? So we started to like realize that was slowing us down. But the moment that kind of like made me realize I needed to do something about it was like my family lived like north and south, so I was with up north with my sister and my brother and my family, and I literally could not wait to get on a train home and go and have a zoo or a spliff or whatever and get back. And I think that was the moment I was like, like maybe not in that moment, but certainly looking back, like that was a trigger for me where I think, oh, okay, I need to do something about it. Um, the process of it was interesting. Like it's all very hazy, right? I mean, understandably with everything I was consuming at that time, but I definitely probably went the cold turkey approach. I definitely would have had relapses where I didn't know it was addiction. You know, I didn't know it was addiction until afterwards. You know what I mean? But I definitely kind of went cold turkey and then kind of would go back into it. And then there was a time where I literally stopped for like 2 years, and literally wouldn't touch it at all. So yeah, there's lots of different methods, and I've tried to question myself on like how I got out of that. I don't really know. I just did it, which isn't very useful for people, but I just did it. I just decided that I didn't want to do that as regularly as I was doing it. And I just decided that I wanted to not do that anymore. And then I just did it. And that might sound funny, but there was no like protocol to it. You know, I can kind of switch things on and off quite easily. And I always have been able to in some aspect. But with that, it definitely had a hold over me. And I don't know, at some point I just woke up to that and just decided that that was enough.
Wow. Okay. My next question was going to be about the environment. So, in terms of, did it all stop after you left uni, or was you still in that environment with that group of friends?
It didn't. I left the environment because I moved home, and I was going to stay up there, but financially I thought it'd be better if I moved back. And had I stayed there, definitely would have been a lot harder to stop the whole drug use, 100%. But then the habits were still there. Like I still would come home, and like even when I first met my girlfriend like 6 years ago, like I'd still smoke weed now and then, and I still wanted it in my life, and it still had a role to play in my life. You know what I mean? So it probably took a couple of years to kind of really break out that cycle of doing it now and then. Like it wasn't so much daily anymore. Like, I had a full-time job and things like that, so things were different. But it was certainly like monthly and sometimes weekly. And then that just became like internal change as I started to distance people further and further away from the people that were doing it. It kind of like naturally stops over time. And then like it's only, I think COVID helped as well. Like I can't lie, we forget about that time, but like I worked so much in COVID. I know everyone was at home furloughed, but I was like intensive care, doing like 60, 70 hours a week. So, and I had a lot of different positive influences around me at that time. I was also living with my girlfriend's family. So, you know, life was just different, wasn't it? So that kind of forced me to kind of break the habit unintentionally, I think. So Yeah, the environment definitely played a big part in that.
And that's kind of what I thought. 'Cause when we've been speaking to people, it seems like environment drives behaviour almost, and what we're doing. So that filters out, and then we're just moving into the building your business. So when did you start doing that?
I actually think it'll be it'd be 3 years since we got our accreditation, right? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, which is crazy, right? But obviously, me and James did our accreditation together on the same cohort. It's how we kind of came to know each other. So it's 3 years from that. When I started business, I mean, I started putting content up around that time, but it never really felt like a business until probably last year, where I'd really say it as a business. But it's been 3 years that I've been in and around the game of wanting to do that. It's just taken probably 2 or 3 years for me to realise how to run and design a business. But yeah, I think 3 years is probably a fair answer.
And what was your biggest driver for wanting to start your own business?
Good question. Safety. And that might sound weird, but I don't know. I think that safety is a big thing, and I think you can literally control so much when you have it for yourself, and you can make something of yourself, and you can design a life that you want to live, and that makes you feel safe and makes you also feel like you're living a life on your terms rather than on someone else's. I got very pissed off with the corporate world of making you jump through hundreds of hoops to get a £3 pay rise, devalued, work. The very fact that your alarm has to go off at that certain time and you have to be in at a certain time and you can't leave and you have to ask for leave and you have to ask for a funeral and you have to ask to go to the toilet in some places and all of that. So like obviously safety was one, like freedom was another, but what does that mean? It's like locational freedom was not really a driver for me. Like I actually really like where I live. Time freedom has become huge over the last few months, and that's something I've really desired to have. Obviously the financial freedom, like with social media, you just see these like get rich quick schemes, and I thought it would be a lot easier than it was. Those would be the two biggest drivers, definitely.
I completely agree with the safety thing as well, because there's been 2 occasions where I've gone into work and they've sat me in an office and said, "We were going through redundancies, see you later," and I've been like, "What?" Like, where's this like secure job that I'm going to work and then gather my pension and then live off my pension? So yeah, I think it's an often misconception that your working job is secure.
It's a huge misconception. Literally, obviously, we were all going to have to work. Like, there's no way around it. You can't not work. In one way or another, like a business is work. It's the same thing. But like the thought of me doing that on someone else's terms for like 50 years makes me feel sick. I can't lie. So yeah, it's definitely a big misconception. It can be risky, but I think it's riskier putting your life in someone else's hands. Whereas if you make steps towards designing a life that you want to live, it puts it in your hands and you have full control over that, and I like that.
What's been the hardest part of building your own business?
I think like facing adversity like day after day and week after week, because it's not like all sunshine and roses, whatever the expression is. For me to say it's hard work is like the wrong way of expressing it, but you just face rejection all the time, and it's not always a no. It's just not seeing things. It's not seeing fruits for your labour quickly. And a lot of the time, in a lot of other pursuits, even like sport, for instance, or the gym or things like that. Like the reason why I liken it to that is because like business is like a game of personal development. And the more you grow, the more your business develops. And yeah, like having the gym and sport, you can you quickly can see progress. Like, you go within a month, you can kind of see progress. But there's so many foundational skills to learn in business that it's hard to like see your progress. And often it can just feel like you're at the start just literally banging your head against a brick wall, like not getting anywhere. Yeah, definitely adversity is like the hardest thing to deal with at the start. Letting go of outcome is the biggest lesson that I've probably learned over last year, is is detachment from wanting it or needing it, what should I say, rather than wanting it, has been like, yeah, the two biggest things I'd say.
So can you break that second one down in terms of expecting the outcome? Is this when you're like selling a product or doing something and then having expectations on that outcome?
It's not so much like when I'm selling or have an offer running or things like that. Like, I don't really put too much stuff on the pedestal there, which is, it's more like the end game, one needing that end game. And I think it links to the safety thing, right? Like, I need that to feel safe and secure. And also, like, understanding for me that if I can just detach from that and just focus on the inputs and know that that North Star is driving me over deep down, and eventually, like, we'll get there, or we'll get somewhere around there, which will be a hell of a lot better than being here. So yeah, it's twofold, I think.
So what motivates you to carry on facing these rejection and keep striving 3 years in? What's the real driver? Is it that freedom and safety that you had mentioned earlier, or is it more than that?
Most likely, yeah. Like, I didn't really realise that until speaking now on this. It's vision though as well. It's knowing. I'll tell you what it is. It's pushing myself. I love pushing myself, and I actually love like expanding myself, and that's what keeps me driven more than like anything else. I like like I said, the game of business is a game of personal development, and I love the fact that I get to challenge myself like every day to actually design something that I want in future, and that actually drives me more than like finances and things like that, because ultimately, like, I learned, this is double-edged sword, but like my self-worth is associated to like kind of not work so much, but the completion of tasks towards a meaningful goal, and that kind of makes you feel like you're worthy and purpose driven. So me having this vision of this limitless life that I want to live, that everything's there, it enables me to kind of like pursue that endlessly. And because the vision will ever expand, when I hit those metrics of success and I become fully self-employed and all of this, I'll always have that drive, because it's for me, not really for everything else.
So for someone else wanting to do something similar to yourself, how would they go about creating their vision?
It's inner work. I think you have to understand who you are first. So we've spoken a lot around therapies and self-work and understanding yourself. Like, I know you are as well. Like, I'm big into well-being. Like, personal well-being is massive. So through that time, the journey we've described, like, I've learned to implement habits like meditation, breath work is literally foundational. Do that like daily. It's journaling, all shit that you've heard before, right? But it's ways to connect with who you are, and when you know who you are, and then you can kind of figure out what's important to you and what you value. And when you know what you value and you know what's important to you, you can start to build out like your vision, and understand that your vision will change sometimes month to month initially, sometimes year to year, or sometimes it won't change at all for many years. But yeah, I think it's connecting to who you are, and then connecting to the values that you hold true, and almost playing a little game with yourself, being like, cool, if I could literally design a way of living, what would that look like? What would it feel like? Even if you want to break it down to smell, just get very detailed with it and write it down, and at least read it to yourself like once a week or a couple times a week. Or if you are doing like practices, like visualize yourself living that life as best you can. And I'd actually say like experience it in some way, shape or form. So like for me, like the desk I'm speaking to at now is where I envision my future life to be when I'm fully self-employed and things like that. And me doing this now is a future version of myself. So it puts it in reality. It's hard to, people say, imagination's a powerful thing. Like, I'm not very good at imagining things that I've not experienced. So I have to like, even if that's like, I don't know, if you're driven by money, like going on Stripe and just putting a fake £5,000 on Stripe for instance, or taking a screenshot of it or search online. So at least you've seen the image and you can consume it and you can start to feel it. Or like even just going to experience like the car, for instance, or just the life. Even on a day off for me, like I will sometimes live the life that is my future self. So I have my morning routine the way I want it to be. I'll do my work block the way I want it to be. I'll just try and live that life. So at least I've experienced it, so I can visualize it and make it, then take actions daily to make it a reality.
I really like that, and I really like how it starts with that inner self and building that up, and getting to know yourself more, and then start by, rather than just visualizing it like you say, start acting in that way, and then it becomes, like you say, a lot more real, and then hence a lot more motivating for you to carry on, pursue that dream.
100%. Like, I've learned recently, like you have to my mentor always says like be, do, have, not the other way around. So like be the person who is worthy of having the things and do the actions that that person would do, the future version of you, and then you'll have the things that you want to have, rather than like wishing you have the things before you do the actions to wait to become the person. So that's like a big thing that I always like focus on. Like even though now like sometimes you don't see much fruits for your labor initially, like I was saying, I'm still becoming that person who's enabled to do the things to eventually have what I want. And that's a big driver for me as well, is knowing that this is for a future result, not for like right now always.
I have to admit, from the people that we went through like the coaching cohort with, and still connected with a lot of them, but without, through all of them, you're probably the most like dedicated to it, and I can see you constantly going at it, doing those posts all the time, and yeah, just kudos to you for your like determination and drive.
I appreciate that. I actually hold myself like very high to that personal standard, because I just think it's like, I don't know, once I set my mind on something, I just need to go and do it. And I don't really know where that comes from, but I appreciate that. It's very kind.
No problem. So, just so we come to a close, what's the future hold for Elliot then?
On a personal level, not much. Like I actually really like who I am now. I love who I am. I love the way I act. I love who I'm becoming. I've kind of got to a place of like self-acceptance and love now. And so on a personal level, not much. Just need to carry on, keep up. I can, we're constantly maturing and constantly experiencing life. And I have this resource now, which is tools and techniques to help me get through those more challenging times. So personally, not a lot. Just need to keep going. On a business perspective, obviously, the vision is to have that as my full-time thing. So I want to make that happen by the end of this year. So we're through Q1 currently. So that's the future for me. And then bigger impact wise is just to create a platform where people can actually design their own limitless life around their 9 to 5 and not actually fall into the trap of Zach was talking about waiting till you're 60 to retire on your pension. That's like my anti-identity. I really don't want that. And I want to help people. I don't want to help them realize they can have that, because I want to work with people who already know that's the case for them, but help them create a roadmap to make that a reality through one way or another. Yeah, I think that's what the future holds. We'll see.
That sounds awesome, because a lot of the time we're driven by our own experiences and what we don't want. And what I love about that is you're then saying, this is what I'm doing, and then almost taking people along with you and helping them map that out. So I really like that. The last question of the podcast, and this is how we end the podcast, so I'm really interested to get your opinion on this. What does mental resilience mean to you?
I think it means an ability to express like your emotions fully and accept them fully as well, so that when rocky times come around, that you're able to just deal with it, like, I won't say quickly, but sometimes emotions, depending on the severity, can last a few days or a week, but not let them throw you off course from your grander vision, I think is what it means to me. And to just consistently face adversity and be okay with that is potentially a positive effect of having mental resilience.
I love that. Really nice summary. Elliot, thank you very much for being a guest on my podcast. It's been great to have you here, and I look forward to seeing your business grow and you grow as well. Thank you.
Thank you, James. It's been a real pleasure. Really enjoyed opening up.